Hello, welcome to the Binge and Self-Love podcast. My name is Anna and thank you so much for tuning in. Today I have a slightly different episode because it's about Victoria's Secret fashion show. Now you might be thinking, what? That was like last year? And yeah, that's true. It was last year in October 2024 and that's actually when I recorded this episode originally. But back then I never posted this episode because I was kind of taking a break from podcast, but I thought, hey, I have this episode. What I said in that episode is something I still consider valid and it's still something I think, so why not post it now? So that's just to explain why I'm posting a review or comments on the Victoria's Secret fashion show that was in October in 2024 now in January of 2025. So I hope you will forgive me the long delay, but hopefully you will enjoy the episode anyway. So let's get into it, shall we? Welcome to the Binge and Self-Love podcast, where we explore what happens when you stop waiting and start living, even though you're scared as hell. I'm your host Anna, and there's absolutely nothing special about me, except that I've decided that I'm done procrastinating, I'm done binge eating, and I'm done hating myself, and I'm ready to start living my life right now. And I'm taking you along for the ride. So if you are ready to do the same, you've tuned into the right podcast. Let's get started. Binge and Self-Love is intended for informational purposes only. It doesn't provide professional medical advice and it is not a substitute for diagnosis or treatment. This October, Victoria's Secret fashion show has come back after 6 years since its last show in 2018. It was held in New York. It was packed with celebrities, performers, and of course Victoria's Secret angels. And as a 30-year-old millennial woman who grew up watching Victoria's Secret fashion show, I have a lot of feelings about it, so let's talk. When I first saw the post on Instagram about the show coming back, for a moment I actually felt this little spark of excitement, almost as if I was the teenage girl who was so excited about not just every year's show, but who was like captivated by this entire VS world, and it's almost like magical charm it had around it. But this year, after 6 years since the last show, I didn't have many expectations. Before I dive into the review of this year's fashion show, let's rewind back into the history. I don't know if you remember, but the Victoria's Secret fashion show was cancelled in 2018, and partially because of the low views in the recent years. And just to put things in a context, in 2018 when the show got cancelled, it had around 3 million views, whereas in 2010, 2011, when it was like the peak season for VS, it had over 10 million of views. So partially it was most likely because of the decrease in views, but also partially because of becoming irrelevant. And I'm sure that if you've been a Victoria's Secret admirer or a hater or something in between, you knew what Victoria's Secret stand for or what Victoria's Secret models represented. The prototype of Victoria's Secret angel was a super tall, super skinny, lean, tanned, white woman with perfect hair and makeup who trains like an athlete and eats a very restricted diet. And I think that at some point people just became tired of it. It didn't represent majority of people, and the show and the brand weren't inclusive at all when it comes to models of color and diversity in sizes and shapes. I also remember that there was a whole scandal around Victoria's Secret CMO, the chief marketing officer, who said something along the lines that he didn't think that transgender models should be casted in the Victoria's Secret show. But I also remember that he stepped down later on, and so did the CEO of the L Brands, which is like the umbrella or was the umbrella company owning Victoria's Secret. So there you had it, a lot of controversy, low views of the VS show, irrelevancy, and all it probably caused the end of Victoria's Secret fashion show as we knew it. So I think that based on all of that, no one really knows or no one really knew what to expect out of this year's fashion show. Now I want to pause here for a little bit because you might be wondering, like, why is this even relevant? Why are you talking about this, Anna? But if you are a millennial, chances are you also, like me, grew up watching the VS show and idolizing the show and the products and the angels. I know that what I'm gonna say is such a dumb comparison, but I would almost say that back then, back in its like peak season, Victoria's Secret fashion show was like the Olympics of consumer-facing fast fashion. To me, it felt like something that I was so looking forward to, and I am sure that so many of us, the self-conscious teenage girls and young women, were fascinated by that world, and we all wanted to be part of it. And the VS show was exactly about that. It was inviting all of us to be part of that experience for one night. Also, I would say that a lot of us wanted to be the Victoria's Secret model, but the second closest option was trying to get as close to looking like the Victoria's Secret model as remotely possible. People were desperate for the secrets how to achieve the Victoria's Secret angel body. We wanted to know what workouts they did, what diets they were on, what products they were using, what did they do to their skin, to their hair, to their makeup, all of it. I honestly wanted to look like the Victoria's Secret angel so bad. I feel really embarrassed to admit it, but I've watched some of the shows probably like dozens of times. I did the Victoria's Secret workout on YouTube, and I also remember that a lot of the VS models actually started their own YouTube channel, which was like this whole another level of a pass into the Victoria's Secret model world. And I think what is so sad and strange is that Victoria's Secret angels were everything that I wasn't. They were tall, skinny, gorgeous, desired, confident, and successful, or at least that's how they were perceived. Then if you watched the interviews with the models and they like share the reality of it, you see it's not always been the case, but that's how they were portrayed. That's how we all thought of them, I would say. And by watching this show and watching the models and buying their products, I could, at least for a little bit, feel like I am also part of the world. And I'm sure I wasn't the only one, but I wanted to get closer to that ideal by working out like them, by eating like them, by doing the makeup like them. Also, I think that what made it so appealing to me was that it was inaccessible, especially in the Czech Republic, where I'm from. Like, the only store where you could get Victoria's Secret was at the airport, which is like, who goes to the airport unless you fly somewhere, right? And it wasn't until last year, 2023, when they opened the actual VS store here in the Czech Republic. So you can get the idea of how inaccessible it was, and I think it made it even more fascinating to me. I did a little digging and I found a message that I sent to my best friend because we were both obsessed with Victoria's Secret worlds and everything. And I think I was 17 and I was actually visiting the United States with my mom. And my mom took me to the Victoria's Secret fashion store. And I was like, oh my God, this is like literally a dream come true. And I remember that I texted my best friend, like, this is every girl's dream. Like, it felt like out of this world experience, like all the shop assistants helping you to choose the right bra size, or I don't know, everything that you want. And it felt like a dream. I know that probably now I sound so ridiculous, but imagine me being 17 and like standing in the VS store for the first time. And we actually talked about the VS world and the models and the shows a lot with my friends. Like we were wondering like who's going to wear the fantasy bra this year, or who's going to open the show, or what wings are the models going to have and who's going to perform, etc. In the early teenage years, I think that I was just mostly fascinated by that gorgeous, perfect-like world, but little did I know that it's unconsciously shaping my body image and what the ideal figure looks like and what is the definition of sexy and desirable and successful by society. And as I got older, like 19, 20 and more, I wanted to measure up to these women. I remember literally to this day doing Adriana Lima VS workouts in my bedroom and watching Romy Street vlogs getting ready for the VS show. I also remember that like when the VS show was coming up each year, it was like a huge spike of motivation for me to work out and to lose weight. It never lasted long, to be honest, but that's like another story, I guess. So not only did VS and the VS show contributed to the stereotype of what is sexy and what type of woman is perceived as desirable, but it also shaped the unhealthy body image and body ideal of millions of young women, and indirectly contributed to people developing disordered eating or eating disorders. For years, it was sending the message that there is just one ideal, acceptable idea of beauty, and if you're not meeting the criteria, then good luck. Okay, so that was a little rant of mine. Now let's get to this year's VS show. Let me start by saying that even with the 6-year-long break, not that much has really changed. It was obvious that VS was trying to change the narrative and change the messaging, but I honestly think that not much has changed. If you look at this year's VS show, you can see more diversity, that's for sure. But in general, there was still a majority of skinny, perfect-like models. For example, Gigi Hadid, who I love and respect, was opening the show. White, tall, skinny. So that's not like super diverse, right? There were also a few plus-size models, which is great, but what I've noticed was that for some reason, they were much more covered than the skinny models. Like, it doesn't really paint the best picture, I think. There were also transgender models, so I think there was some positive shift, but overall it was still mostly white skinny women. At the beginning, like before the show started, I felt that spark, like I've told you about, but as soon as the show started, I actually realized that it's not really interesting to watch. As much as I used to love it as a teenager and a young woman, it has lost its spell on me, which is a good thing, I think, but still. But I don't want to be just hating on the show or anything like that. There were also some great moments too. We could see a lot of OG models like Adriana Lima, Alessandra Ambrosio, Barbara Palvin, Behati Prinsloo, Candice Swanepoel. Beautiful wings and shoes. I've always been a huge fan of those VS heels, like they are gorgeous. Plus, Cher was performing, like that was amazing. So overall, I think it was obvious that there was some attempt to change the narrative, but I'm not really sure it worked. So I want to know, were you watching the VS show? Are you planning to? If so, what were your thoughts? How do you feel? Were you a fan of VS before? Were you not? How do you feel about it now? Definitely let me know. If you are listening on Spotify, you can comment directly in the episode, or you can DM me on Instagram at Binge on Self-Love. I will be very happy to read what you think. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I hope you'll have a great rest of the week and talk to you soon. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I would like to ask you for a small favor. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe to the Binge on Self-Love podcast on your favorite podcasting platform. It's absolutely free and it will help me spread the podcast among more people. Thank you in advance and see you soon.